Don't go. The words didn't belong in a place like that. Not in a room filled with crystal glasses, low jazz, and people pretending power was just money. I had learned to read danger long before I built an empire out of it. And that night, something fell off the moment I stepped inside. Too quiet, too polished, like a stage waiting for the wrong line to be spoken. I didn't sit. I didn't drink. I watched. The exits, the reflections in the mirrors, the way one of the waiters kept checking his watch like he was counting down. Then she moved into my line of sight. Just a waitress. Black uniform. Hair pulled back. Nothing about her should have mattered. But she hesitated when she reached my table. Just for a second. Long enough for me to notice. Long enough for my instincts to sharpen. Sir, her voice was steady. Too steady. I nodded once, giving nothing away. Control was my language. Silence was my advantage. She leaned in closer than necessary, like she was adjusting the placement of a glass. And then, barely above a breath, she whispered, "Don't go. They're waiting outside." Everything in me stilled. Not because of the warning. I'd heard threats dressed in softer words. Not because of the risk. Risk was routine. It was her voice. Something in it didn't just sound familiar. It felt familiar, like a memory I had buried on purpose. I didn't move. Not immediately. I let the moment stretch, watching her pull back like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just shifted the entire balance of the room. She turned to leave. Calm, controlled, but her fingers trembled just enough to betray her. And that's when I realized she wasn't just warning me. She was afraid I would recognize her. She moved like she had practiced disappearing. Smooth, quiet, almost invisible. But not to me. Not anymore. I watched her cross the room, weaving between tables, never looking back, never giving herself away. Anyone else would have missed it. I did not. There was a pattern to her steps. A restraint, like she was holding something in, or holding herself back. I should have stood up, walked out, tested her warning. That would have been the logical move, the control move. But logic was not what held me in place. It was that voice. I leaned back slightly, letting my gaze follow her reflection in the mirrored column near the bar. She reached the service station and paused. Just for a second, her hand pressed against the counter like she needed something solid, like the room was shifting under her feet. Fear, not the kind people showed when they saw me. This was different. This was personal. I tapped the table once. A signal. Within seconds, Daniel stepped closer behind me, silent as always. I did not look at him. "Tell me what is outside," I said under my breath. He did not ask questions. He never did. He walked away without a sound. Efficient, reliable, predictable, everything I trusted. But even as he moved, I realized something I did not like. I was not waiting for his answer. I was watching her, the way she kept her head down, the way she avoided every reflective surface now, like she knew I was looking. Like she knew exactly what would happen if I got a clear view of her face for too long. I stood up slowly, not because of the threat, because of her. Power usually meant control over the room, over people, over outcomes. But right then, control shifted. She had information I did not. And worse, she had a past I could almost remember. I took one step forward and the room adjusted to me the way it always did, conversations lowering, eyes shifting, space opening without anyone being told to move. But she did not look up, she did not react, and that was the first thing that felt wrong, because everyone reacts, everyone feels it when I move, but she kept her focus on a tray she was not actually arranging, fingers brushing the edge of a glass that was already perfectly aligned, a pointless motion, a distraction, and I knew. Distractions when I saw them. I had built a life around spotting them before they turned into problems, but this was different. This felt like she was not hiding from me. She was hiding from something inside herself, something tied to me. I stopped 2 feet behind her, close enough to hear her breathing, steady on the surface, but just slightly off rhythm underneath, like she was forcing it to stay even, like she was holding something down. "Look at me," I said quietly, not a command. Not yet, just a statement placed between us. She froze, not visibly, not in a way anyone else would catch, but I felt that the air around her tightened. Her hand paused mid-movement, and for a second I thought she would turn. I expected resistance, denial, something predictable, but instead she exhaled slowly and kept her eyes down. "You should leave," she said, still not looking at me. Her voice lower now, tighter, controlled in a different way than before, not warning, not casual, something closer to urgency wrapped in restraint. And that shift hit harder than anything else because she was not trying to convince me, she was trying to protect me. And that made no sense, not in my world, not with someone like her, not unless there was history. I moved closer, just enough that she could not pretend I was not there. Say it again, I said, softer this time. And that was when she made a mistake, just a small one, almost. Nothing. She glanced up, not fully, just enough for me to catch the edge of her expression in the reflection of the metal counter. And in that fraction of a second, something clicked. Not a full memory, not yet, but a crack in the wall I had built around the past, a voice in the dark, a name I had not heard in years. And I felt it before I understood it, the shift, the loss of control, because for the first time that night, I was not the one asking questions. I was the one trying to remember. The silence between us stretched just a second too long. And in my world, a second like that meant something had already shifted beyond control. I did not like that feeling. I did not tolerate it, but I did not step back either because whatever this was, whatever she was, it had already crossed a line I could not ignore. Look at me, I said again, quieter this time, not forcing, just waiting. And that was the difference. I was not used to waiting, not for anyone, not for anything, but she made me. She inhaled slowly, like she was preparing for something inevitable. And then she turned, not fully, not completely open, just enough for me to see her face without reflection, without distortion. And for a moment, nothing happened, no immediate recognition, no clear memory, just a strange pressure behind my eyes, like something trying to surface but held back by years of silence. She looked different, older, sharper, shaped by a life I did not witness. But there was something in the way she held my gaze for exactly half a second before pulling it away again. Something familiar in that restraint. You should not be here tonight, she said, and this time. Her voice did not shake. It carried weight, certainty, like she was not guessing, like she knew exactly what was coming. And that certainty did something to me because it meant she was not reacting, she was anticipating, which meant she had knowledge, and knowledge was power. I studied her more carefully now. The details, the small things people overlooked. The way her left hand curled slightly inward, like she was used to holding on to something small, something fragile. The way her eyes avoided direct light, preferring shadows, habits, not accidents, learned behavior. And then it hit, not a full memory, just a fragment, a dim hallway, a younger voice calling out, not afraid, just curious. Adrian. The name echoed in my head. Not spoken out loud, but close enough that I almost answered it. I stepped closer without thinking, closing the distance she had tried so carefully to maintain. Where did you learn that tone? I asked. Not about the warning, not about the words, but about the way she said them, because that was what stayed with me. The rhythm, the familiarity, something that did not belong to a stranger. She stiffened slightly, just enough to confirm I was getting closer to something real. And for the first time since I walked into that room, I saw it clearly, not fear of what was outside, not fear of me, but fear of what would happen if I remembered everything. And that realization shifted everything again, because it meant the danger was no longer just waiting outside the door. It was standing right in front of me, and she knew it. Daniel returned before she could answer, his presence subtle but immediate at my side. There are people outside, he said quietly. Not customers, not staff. They are waiting. I did not look at him. I did not need to because I already knew, not from him, but from her. And that realization settled into something colder, something more precise, because it meant she had seen it before I did, which meant she had been watching longer than I had, which meant she was not just a waitress caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was positioned, intentional, connected to something I had not yet uncovered. I shifted my attention back to her, and this time I did not hide it. I let her feel it, the full weight of my focus, the kind that made most people step back without being told, but she did not move, not away, not forward. She held her ground just enough to make it clear she was not surprised by any of this. And that was the moment the balance tipped completely, because power was no longer about who controlled the room. It was about who understood the situation first. And right now, that was her. How long have you? No, and I asked, my voice low, controlled, but no longer detached. She shook her head slightly, almost instinctively. That is not the question you should be asking, she replied. And there was again that tone, calm but layered, like every word carried something underneath it, something unsaid but deliberate. I stepped closer, reducing the space between us to almost nothing, not to intimidate, but to force clarity. Then tell me what question I should be asking, I said, and for a second, just a second, something broke through her control. Her eyes met mine fully this time. No hesitation, no avoidance, and I saw it. Not just recognition, not just fear, but something heavier, something that felt like history pressing against the present. You should be asking why I'm still here, she said, and the way she said still did not sound like time. It sounded like survival, like she had not been supposed to be here at all, like her presence in this moment was already a deviation from something that had been decided long ago. I felt the shift again, deeper this time, fragments aligning, a memory trying to take shape but slipping just out of reach. A voice in the dark, a name I almost said, out loud. And then another realization hit, sharper than the first. She was not just part of my past, she had been hiding from it, from me, from everything tied to who I had become. And yet she had chosen this moment to step back into my world, not for herself, but for me, to warn me, to stop me, which meant whatever was waiting outside was not the real threat. The real threat was why she had come back at all, and why now. After all these years, she was finally letting me get close enough to remember. The words still echoed in my head long after she said it. Not as a question, not as confusion, but as a fact I had somehow missed. And I did not like missing things, especially not things that stood this close to me, breathed the same air, and looked at me like she knew exactly what I was about to become before I did. Then answer it, I said, my voice quieter now. Not demanding, not forcing, but pressing, because whatever this was, it was already deeper than the situation outside, deeper than the men waiting, deeper than the controlled world I operated in. She hesitated, not because she did not have the answer, but because she was choosing whether I deserved it. And that shift hit harder than anything else because I was not used to being evaluated, not like that, not by someone who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Because you were not supposed to walk out that door tonight, she said finally, and the way she said suppose did not sound like prediction, it sounded like memory, like she had already seen the outcome, like she had already lived through a version of this moment where I made the wrong choice. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear, not yet, but something close to recognition, something unfinished. You talk like this already happened, I said, watching her carefully, tracking every shift in her expression, every controlled breath. Every flicker she tried to hide. And this time she did not deny it. She just looked at me, fully, completely. No walls, no hesitation. And for a second the noise of the restaurant faded. The room blurred into nothing. And it was just her, just that look, just that feeling that I was standing in front of something I had lost once and never understood how. Maybe it did, she said. And that was not an answer. It was a fracture, a crack wide enough for something real to slip through. Something I could not control, something I could not categorize. I stepped back half an inch, not out of fear, but because for the first time, proximity felt dangerous in a way I could not measure. Daniel shifted slightly behind me, waiting for direction, waiting for a decision, but I did not give one, not yet, because leaving now would mean ignoring her, ignoring the past, clawing its way back into the present. And staying meant stepping into something I had not prepared for, something personal, something I could not solve with strategy alone. I exhaled slowly, eyes still locked on hers. Say my name, I said, not as a test, but as confirmation, because if she said it the way I remembered, if she carried that same tone, that same weight, then this was not coincidence, this was not chance, this was something I'd been running from without knowing it. And she knew it too. I could see in the way her lips parted slightly, in the hesitation that followed. Not fear, not uncertainty, but something closer to regret, like saying it out loud would change everything. And in that moment, I realized the truth was already here, already between us, waiting, and once it surfaced, nothing about this night would stay the same. Her lips parted, and for a second, time did something strange. It slowed, stretched like the world itself was waiting for a single word to decide what came next. I held her gaze, unblinking, unmoving, not because I needed control, but because I needed truth, and truth did not come easily in my world. It had to be pulled, earned, sometimes forced, but not this time, not with her, because whatever this was, it was not something I could take. It was something she had to give. Adrian, she said, softly, and the moment my name left her lips, Something broke open inside me. Not violently, not suddenly, but like a door that had been locked for years finally giving way under pressure. The tone, the way she said it, not with fear, not with distance, but with familiarity, with something that reached past who I was now and touched who I had been before everything changed, before the suits, before the power, before the distance I had built between myself and anything that could hurt me. I felt it then, clear for the first time, a memory rising, incomplete but undeniable, a younger version of that same voice, lighter, unguarded, calling out to me in a place that did not look like this. A place without marble floors and low lighting, a place smaller, quieter, real. I blinked once, grounding myself, but the feeling did not disappear. It stayed, pressing against my chest, demanding attention, demanding recognition. Say it again, I said, but this time it was not a command. It was something else, something closer to confirmation, like if she repeated it, I would not be able to deny what was happening anymore. She hesitated, not because she was unsure, but because she understood exactly what that would do, exactly what line it would cross. And for a moment, I saw it clearly, the conflict in her, the pull between staying hidden and being seen, between protecting herself and stepping into whatever this was becoming. And then she made her choice. Adrian, she said again, a little steadier this time. And that was enough. The second time always was the repetition, the pattern. It aligned everything, the fragments, the tone, the feeling, and suddenly I was not just remembering a voice. I was remembering her, not as she stood in front of me now, but as she had been, smaller, younger, standing in a doorway with that same look in her eyes, that same quiet strength hidden beneath something softer, something I had not recognized back then for what it was. Lily, I said before I could stop myself. And the moment her name left my mouth, I knew, not guessed, not suspected, knew, the truth settled in, completely, undeniable, irreversible, and her reaction confirmed it. The way her breath caught, the way her shoulders stiffened just slightly, not in fear, but in recognition, like she had been waiting for that moment and dreading it at the same time. Everything shifted then, not just the room, not just the situation, but the entire structure of what I thought I understood. Because Lily was not supposed to be here, not like this, not after everything, not after the way things had ended or disappeared or been taken away without explanation. And yet she was standing in front of me, alive, real, warning me like she still had a place in my world, like she had never truly left it. And that realization hit harder than anything else, because it meant the past I had buried was not gone. It had been waiting, just like the people outside, just like this moment. And now that I had finally seen it, finally said her name, there was no going back to not knowing. The sound of her name still lingered in the air between us, not loud, not dramatic, but heavy in a way nothing else in that room could match. And for a moment I forgot about the people outside, about the carefully balanced world I controlled, about everything that had defined me for years, because none of it made sense next to her standing here, alive, real, looking at me like she had already accepted something I was only just beginning to understand. You remember, she said quietly, and it was not a question, it was a realization, one that seemed to both steady her and break something inside her at the same time. I studied her face more closely now, not as a stranger, not as a variable to calculate, but as someone I had once known without needing to think, someone whose presence had not required analysis or distance. And that difference hit harder than anything else, because it showed me exactly how much had changed, not just in her, but in me. You disappeared, I said, the words coming slower than I expected, like they had been waiting for permission to exist. No, she replied, shaking her head slightly. I did not disappear, Adrian. You did. And that shift landed deeper than any accusation, because it was not said with anger, it was said with truth, the kind that did not need to raise its voice to be heard. I exhaled, processing, recalibrating, because if that was true, then everything I thought I understood about that part of my life was incomplete, and I did not tolerate incomplete information, especially not when it came to something this personal. Then, explain it, I said, not as a demand, but as a necessity, and she hesitated again, not out of fear this time, but because she was deciding how much of the past I was ready to face. There is no time, she said finally, glancing toward the front entrance for just a fraction of a second. But it was enough for me to see the urgency return, the reason she had stepped into this moment in the first place. You need to leave now. I followed her gaze briefly. then looked back at her because leaving without understanding was no longer an option. Not after this, not after her. I am not walking out that door without you, I said, and the words surprised even me, because they were not strategic, they were not calculated, they were instinctive, immediate, and that shift in me did not go unnoticed. Her eyes widened slightly, not in fear, but in recognition of what that meant. That I was no longer treating her as part of the environment, I was treating her as part of the decision. And that changed everything. You do not understand, she said, her voice lower now, more urgent. If they see me with you, it will make things worse. I narrowed my gaze slightly, processing that because it confirmed something critical. She was not just aware of the threat. She was connected to it in a way that went beyond coincidence. Who are they to you? I asked, and for the first time since this began, she did not answer immediately, the silence stretching just long enough to tell me the truth before she said it. They're not after you, Adrian, she said softly, her eyes meeting mine fully again, steady, unflinching. They are here because of me. And that was the moment everything shifted again. Not just the balance, not just the power, but the entire direction of the night, because I had walked into that room thinking I was the center of whatever was unfolding, thinking I was the one being watched, the one being waited for, but now I saw it clearly. I was not the target. I was the variable, the unexpected piece that changed the outcome simply by being here. And she knew it. She had always known it, which was why she warned me, which was why she stayed, which was why she had not run the moment she saw me, because this was never just about danger. It was about timing, about intersection, about two paths crossing again at exactly the wrong moment, or maybe the only moment they ever could. And as I looked at her, really looked at her, not as a memory, not as a mystery, but as someone standing in front of me with a choice already made, I realized something that changed everything again. She had not come back by accident. She had come back knowing I would be here, knowing I would recognize her, knowing it would force this moment into existence. And that meant whatever happened next was not random. It was intentional, and I was already too far in to step away from it. The moment her words settled, the room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls had shifted without anyone noticing. And for the first time that night, I stopped thinking about control entirely, because control assumed clarity, and nothing about this was clear anymore. Not her, not the people outside, not the past that had just forced its way back into my present. Because of you, I repeated quietly, not questioning, just confirming, and she nodded once, a small movement, but steady, like she had already accepted the weight of that truth long before I had even stepped into this room. I studied her again, but differently now, not looking for answers, but for understanding, because if they were here for her, if she had known they would be here, then everything she had done tonight was not reaction. It was decision. You knew I would be here, I said, and this time she did not deny it. She did not deflect. She just held my gaze, and that silence told me more than any explanation could. I hoped you would not come, she said finally, and there was the contradiction, the truth wrapped inside something softer, because hope meant uncertainty, but her actions had been precise, intentional. She had positioned herself here anyway, knowing the risk, knowing the outcome, knowing it would bring us face to face again, and that realization settled into something deeper, something that had nothing to do with the threat outside, and everything to do with her standing in front of me now. Then why stay? I asked, and for a second, just a second, the control she had held so carefully slipped, not completely, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me. Her eyes shifted, not away, but inward, like she was choosing whether to say something she had kept buried for too long. Because if you walked out that door tonight, she said slowly, it would not just end with you leaving, and the way she said it, not dramatic, not exaggerated, just certain, sent a quiet weight through me that I could not ignore, not fear, but something closer to inevitability. I took a breath, steady, deliberate, and then I made a decision, not based on strategy, not based on calculation, but on something I had not listened to in years, instinct. Then we do not walk out, I said, and that shifted everything again, because this time the power did not come from knowing more, it came from choosing differently. She looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time since this began, I saw it clearly, not fear, not hesitation, but something else entirely, something that had always been there, something that had survived everything that had come between us, "You always did that," she said softly, almost to herself, changed the outcome without realizing it. And I held her gaze steady, certain now, in a way I had not been before, because whatever this was, whatever had brought her back into my life, whatever was waiting outside that door, it no longer mattered the same way. Not when the past I thought I had lost was standing right in front of me. Not when she had chosen to stay. Not when I finally understood that this was never just about danger. It was about her. It always had been. And as the noise of the room slowly returned around us, as the world resumed like nothing had changed, I realized the truth I had been avoiding since the moment she spoke. This night was not the beginning of something new. It was the continuation of something that had never actually ended.